Hello, everyone. My name is Gabrielle Crichlow. I'm from A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. Welcome to the second episode of Hot Topics, where we talk real talk about things that are happening in education, employment, mental health, social services, excuse me, or anything else steamy. So our topic today is life as a parent. So my guest with me today, who's going to help me out, his name is Malachi Davis. Let me tell you a little bit about him. So Malachi is the co-founder of the Mal the Motivator Brand. He's a motivational speaker who has spoken at some of the most prestigious venues and institutions around the country. In addition to motivational speaking, he's also a mentor and a writer. He's written articles for the Long Island Press, excuse me, Queen's Courier, CANA Foundation, the Knocturnal, and One World Fest Global. He's worked with the likes of Congressman Steve Israel, NBA player Tobias Harris, and NBA agent Torrel Harris. He majored in creative writing at New England College, where he was also the captain of the basketball team. And most notably, he was featured on the Ellen DeGeneres show as a guest due to his writing ability. He's done voiceovers and has even helped to work on an ad that was featured on 3 billboards in Times Square. So, Mr. Davis, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. All right, so let's get started. So you have an interesting story about life as a parent. Please tell us about it.
Well, I'm a dad to a 3-year-old girl. Her name is Gabrielle Davis. And I'm, definitely part of that girl dad hashtag that a lot of people have been doing lately, since Kobe, having all those girls and stuff like that. But being a young parent, I had her when I was 26. So, relatively young. But I grew up in a single parent household. So I was raised by my mom. I had a relationship with my dad, but, we would go years without talking sometimes. And then seeing him was very sparse. So, my mom is really the person who I credit with raising me. So, just being a dad myself and having certain experiences that I had with my own father, I just wanted to make sure that I was, the best dad that I could be. I wanted my daughter to always know that I'm there and just feel that, I'm with her every step of the way.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you were raised by a single parent. So
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think for me, it was a little different than some other people's stories. I know a lot of people talk about being raised by a single parent, and it's kind of like, they felt different coming up, or they saw their friends with dads, and they grew up in households where their parents were married, so it made them feel ostracized. But for me, it really wasn't so much like that. I always tell people my mom did such a good job making me just feel loved that I never really felt like anything was missing. I never was embarrassed when it would just be my mom at parent teachers nights and stuff like that. And just watching my mom be strong, I think I learned a lot about fortitude, perseverance, strength. Watching my mom, as a single mother, get her master's and just go on and do so many things. And she never really allowed that to stop her. Her being a single parent, she still made sure to be successful and do her own endeavors, but she still made sure she was a great mom. She, raised me to the best of her ability, and I never really felt like I was missing anything, not living with my dad.
Well, you mentioned earlier that you've spoken to your dad before, but you didn't really have a great relationship. Is that right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I just think that well, for one, we didn't live together, so that already creates a certain type of distance, not being raised in a household with him. And he had, certain beliefs that may have differed my mom's beliefs. That so when I would be around him, there would be certain things that he didn't necessarily agree with. Also just time, like there would be long stints where we wouldn't speak at all. I wouldn't hear from him. Sometimes 2 years, 3 years. So just having the inconsistency of a relationship. So there would be times where, I felt like, all right, this is cool. Or, I may spend a couple weekends with him. And then it might be a stretch where we don't really speak at all, or something happens, or he has a disagreement with my mom. And now it's like, we go from, having somewhat of a relationship to not really speaking at all. So I think that inconsistency just made things very weird. And that was something that I always wanted to make sure that my daughter didn't experience, just the inconsistency. Like, well, sometimes my dad is there and then sometimes he's not. And then I just feel like that's a very, unstable way to live or have a relationship where you don't really know what's next. 1 minute we could be cool and then the next minute we have a fallout or disagreement. I don't hear from you for a couple of years. So, that was kind of the basis of our relationship.
And I imagine that because you had that kind of unstable, rocky relationship with him, that it affected the way that you parent your daughter. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. In a positive way, though, I would say. I think I always tell people you can either learn two things from adversity. One, you can succumb to the adversity and be the thing that you hated or the thing that you didn't care for, or you can look at what you didn't have and then correct what you saw and be better. So I feel like I chose to look at the things that I didn't like per se, or the things that made me feel a certain type of way that I knew weren't positive, and I just wanted to change and adjust that. So I knew that, all right, I may not have the best model of what to do, but I do have the best model of what not to do. And, I just implemented the things that I know I wanted as a child or, as a young kid. And I try to make sure that those are things that I implement in my relationship with my daughter.
Well, since you have a daughter, I'm wondering, would it be different if you had a son? Like, would there be certain ways that you would act to like, are you acting the way you're acting because you have a girl as opposed to a boy?
I don't think it would necessarily be different in terms of like my approach, because it would just be me kind of doing the same things, like just trying to be there, trying to make sure that the consistency is there, make sure that there's never a time where they don't feel loved or they don't feel wanted. But I think the only difference with a son would just be that it would be more of a mirror to me and my dad, because I, obviously was a boy. So I just think it would be more of a reflection of, like, the pride that men have when they have sons, that to carry on their legacy. Not saying that your daughter can't do that, but just, your daughter gets married, she takes her husband's last name. Your son gets married, he keeps that last name and passes it on to his children and things of that nature. So I just think, as far in terms of that part, it would be different. But as far as like my approach and the things that I would do, I think it would still be the same thing. Just trying to be a nurturer, try to make sure that he was, feeling loved, and that there was never a question of the consistency of his father.
So when you say feeling love, what does that look like?
For me, I just think consistency is important with children. When a child, because I always say to people that you can tell a person that you love them until you're blue in the face, but your actions are what's really important. And I think children associate consistency and being there with love. I know I did as a child. What part of the main reasons why I felt so loved by my mom was the consistency. She was always there through thick and thin, no matter what. No matter what adversity she and I faced, I knew I could always count on her, and that was love to me. Like, I know there's never going to be a time, there's never going to be a situation that'll make my mom not be there in any capacity. Like, she's always going to be there 100%. She's always going to sacrifice. And I just think the other thing that I, associated with love and what I feel is important with love is just sacrificing. And I know my mom made a lot of sacrifices being a single parent. For one, she was pregnant with me at 22 years old. So she was very young. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like she was an older woman. I'm sorry.
I'm
did
here.
You lose me? Okay.
I see you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. She, she was a young woman. So it's like she didn't really have the opportunity to kind of enjoy her 20s because she was being a parent, when her friends were, clubbing and partying and enjoying their early 20s, she was, hustling, trying to make ends meet, trying to make sure that I was okay. I had, good clothes, food in my stomach, a roof over my head. So I always associated that with love as well. Just knowing, my mother will sacrifice anything to make sure I'm happy. So I think that was one of the main things that I tried to take from my mom and incorporate in me being a parent, is just knowing, like, I'll make whatever sacrifice has to be made for my daughter. And I know that she'll appreciate that in the long run when she gets older and realizes that, life isn't easy. And sometimes those sacrifices meant sacrificing my own happiness to make sure she's happy. But I feel like as a parent, that's what you do. And that's true unconditional love.
That's good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, well, applying to today's day and age, what fears do you have raising a girl in this day and age?
There's a lot. I think that social media, entertainment, reality TV has really tainted the image of what it is to be a lady. So, I also have sisters, and my little sisters are teenagers. So, like, I kind of see the influence of, like, the Cardi B's and, these different entertainers that kind of promote a certain, thing, and the sexualization of certain things. And I know that is definitely a fear of mine, because I know as a father, just being as protective as I am of my daughter, I don't really want that influence to affect her, and I know it's kind of like inevitable that at some point she's gonna be into that type of stuff, and she's gonna be on Instagram and Twitter, and certain things just are out of my control. But I just hope to be able to raise her in a way where she's aware of, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what's respectable, how she should carry herself. I think all of those things are very important and integral when it comes to raising a young woman, because I do know that it's not easy in this, day and age where everything is just so, like, I think social media for me, I think, is what really made things a lot different. Because when I was coming up, it wasn't so social media driven, like, we didn't have the Instagram and the Facebook and, all of these things that young kids have access to. So there were a lot of things that we weren't seeing and that we were sheltered from. Whereas now, it's like, as soon as you're old enough to get on the computer, you're kind of like, you have access to these things. So, my fear is just, well, I wouldn't say fear, but my concern is just that her upbringing will be strong enough to not get sucked up in some of the things that she will come across in life.
And her mom is in the picture, right? I know it's you and your wife.
Yes, right? Absolutely.
So there is that 2-parent household for her, where as opposed to you had the 1-parent household. Right. So how do you think things are different with having a 2-parent household as opposed to a 1-parent household?
I think
there's a difference.
Well, there's definitely a difference. And I'll say, I believe the biggest difference is people don't really listen to what you say. They watch what you do. So I feel like it's a way, it's way more effective to be the example of what you're trying to like get across to someone that's trying to portray than they just say it. So it's like, for example, if I'm a drug dealer and, you know, I'm poisoning my community, but I'm trying to tell the youth, listen, don't do this, don't do that. They're not going to hear my message if my actions don't display what I'm saying. So it's like the first thing they'll say is, well, you're a hypocrite. How could you tell us not to do this if you're doing it? But if I'm living a life where I'm not doing that, I'm only giving back, they only see me doing positive things, my message will be a lot more, you know, effective just based off of what they see. Because now it's like, all right, well, I see what he's doing in the community and I can model myself after that. So I feel like it's the same thing with everything in life. And as a parent, I feel like when you're showing your child a healthy relationship and they're able to see their parents loving each other and working together and just raising them as a team, they automatically aspire to be like that because that's all they know. That's what they see. So that's what becomes normal. The same way dysfunction can become normal. So if you grow up, you don't have both parents in your household and, you know, you're growing up and seeing certain things, that dysfunction becomes a normality. So now you start to, you know, live like that because that's all you know. And you're just mimicking what you see, what you go through on an everyday basis. So I think the biggest thing with her having, you know, her mom and I in the same household, raising her together, is she'll have an example right in her own household of what it should be like and what it's supposed to be like. And that's where she'll differ from with you know, me and anybody else who grew up with a single parent and, you know, didn't really have the functional two-parent household marriage, seeing their parents loving each other. And I just think that all of those things are great visuals for the person, you know, because I do have friends that grew up that way and, you know, they got married early because they saw that. So getting married was normal to them. Whereas to me, it wasn't so much as of a normality. So that was something that I have to seek in on my own. You know, it wasn't like, oh, well, that's normal because I saw it. And that's why I'm, you know, just doing it because I'm following what I saw in my upbringing. So I just feel like I'm happy to know that she has a, you know, walking visual of the right way to do things.
That's awesome. That's absolutely amazing.
And
So there was an interesting thing that we talked about in our preliminary meeting, in that because you were raised with a single parent, that makes you want to be more of a parent to your daughter.
right.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think I just I grew up knowing what I always wanted, and it wasn't like I didn't see it other places because, like I said, I did have friends that had both parents, and I would go over their house and see what it was like to, you know, be in a household where the mom and the dad are a functioning team, and those were things that I would see and be like, wow, you know, that's cool, you know, that's really dope. And I think me knowing that that was something that I kind of longed for, it made me work 10 times harder to make sure that when I did have a child, she would have that. So I feel like me growing up in a single parent household just kind of pushed me to do better and be better. Cause it's like, when you know what something feels like and you know that something's dysfunctional, as a parent, naturally, you always want the best for your kids. So it was just a natural adjustment for me to say, you know what, I want her to have better. I want to do better. I want her to experience better. And I don't really want her to grow up with some of the dysfunctional things that I grew up with. And that's not even just the single parent situation. That's anything that I've gone through that I feel like was dysfunctional or might have deterred me from doing better. It's like I don't want her to experience anything. You know, I feel like that's the point of life, is that with each generation you're supposed to get better. So, you know, my mom passed the torch to me. So there's certain things that my mom went through that she didn't want me to go through. And then I'm supposed to pass the torch to my daughter, and so on and so forth. And I think that that's the essence of family, you know, just knowing that you want to make sure that you're equipping the next generation with the tools to do better than you did. So, you know, that was just like a natural thing for me, you know, knowing, listen, I don't want her to get accustomed to this abnormality of not having both her parents, and she's only seeing me sometimes, and there's no consistency to our relationship. And, you know, sometimes we're on and sometimes we're off. I wanted it to be like, no, my dad is always there. I know I can always count on him. He lives with me. He takes me to school. He's very, you know, active and integral in my growth and development. So, you know, it's just about that for me.
Right. And I hear that. I hear you want better, you want more. You don't want her to
Right.
have the same relationship with her father being you as you did with your own father. So with that said, so what kind of parent do you think you are right now?
I think I'm a great parent. I think that obviously there's things that I can improve on, not so much in my relationship with her, but just in life in general, you know, because there's certain things that I want her to always like know, just for like life lessons and stuff like that. Because obviously there's certain traumas that I've experienced that make it that I'm a certain type of way, you know, like we all have to heal. Mental health is important. Dealing with certain traumas are important. So I feel like in that way, I still have some work to do. But in terms of my relationship with her, like, you know, we're great. I spend a lot of time with my daughter. You know, she's really a daddy's girl. Like, we go to the park, we go to the movies, we have little lunch dates. Like, we do a lot. And I know that she feels the love, she feels the affection. That's something that she'll never have to question with me, because it's like she's well aware of, you know, how much I love her just by my actions and just by me being there. You know, like, that's half the battle, just being there. And then the rest is just you doing the right thing while you're there. And I feel like I've done a great job. I try to be the same type of parent my mom was with me when it comes to just being affectionate and loving. And I feel like I had a great blueprint from my mom. So I'm kind of just, you know, following that blueprint really, and then just trying to incorporate all the things that I learned from her and just the village that raised me. Because, you know, they always say it takes a village. And I definitely had a lot of, you know, great examples in my life, you know, uncles, my grandfather, my aunts. My grandfather was one of 6, so he has 5 sisters. So, you know, all of them were very integral in my upbringing. My great grandmother. So I definitely had a great village to kind of show me certain things and stuff like that. So I definitely say I'm a great dad.
That's awesome. So I also want to point out that it's because I also spoke to you about having male role models, since you didn't
Right.
really have a consistent one, is that you had basketball, so you were able to find those missing male role models.
Right.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah. So I played basketball from, I would say, like 5th grade all the way up until college. I was actually ranked in the country and in the state. And I definitely had a lot of coaches that stepped up to the plate and were great male figures, you know, and basketball is like that, you know, because when you're a coach, it's like you're leading a lot of young men and you spend a lot of time with your coaches. You know, you're traveling, you're on the road, you basically with your coach all summer. You know, your AAU is like all literally the whole summer. So spending so much time with my coaches, they definitely had a huge impact. And I was lucky enough to have a lot of coaches that didn't just look at me as a, as an item or as an asset in terms of, oh, he's a great basketball player. They looked at me like, this is a young man. And as a male, and a lot of my coaches were African American males, they like, I have to lead and show him, what it's supposed to look like and stuff like that. And to be honest with you, a lot of the kids that I played with were in the same, similar situations, because a lot of the kids that end up being really good in basketball are like kids from impoverished areas that come from single parent households and stuff like that. So there was always a lot of great male role models that I had. And even though it wasn't necessarily my dad, I definitely had good, male role models come. Even my mother's father, my grandfather, he was a great man, was married to my grandmother. My grandmother unfortunately passed when I was 4 years old, but, they were married. They bought a home together. They were homeowners. They raised my mom, my uncle, my aunt. And, that was even a great example, just seeing my grandfather and how he was with my mom and my aunt and my uncle. And he wasn't the most affectionate person in the world. He was definitely like a drill sergeant, but in terms of just being a present father, financially making sure, all of them were good, paying for them to go to school, all of those things were definitely things that resonated with me and stuff that I saw. And I said, I want to be like that. I want to be able to pay for my daughter to go to college, and that's not a problem. She knows that that's something she could count on me for. So, yeah, I definitely had a great village and a lot of good male role models and passion. My uncle, my great grandfather. So I definitely had something.
And that's awesome. The fact that what you were missing, you were able to find in other ways. And, and because you were able to get that balance, you can pass that balance on to your daughter.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So now, I mean, she's 3 now, she's young. So what's going to happen when she hits puberty and when she's 9 years old, 10, 11?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I have 2 sisters and they're a lot younger than me. So I kind of experienced it with them. So that was like good practice. But it's definitely not anything I'm looking forward to, after going through it and seeing it with my sisters. But, fortunately, I have, her mom, who is a woman who will be able to relate to what it's like to be a woman at that age. My mom and I are very close. So I have her aunts, my 2 sisters, and, there's a lot of, I'm gonna be honest, like I always make a joke and say we need more testosterone in my family because there's so many women, like I said, my grandfather has 5 sisters, my mom, my aunt. So I just, I think I'll be okay because I have all of that women influence, and they were all young women at one point. So they kind of know the ins and out of that. And I'm not above asking for help. You know what I mean? Like I'm not that like prideful person that'll be like, I'm just gonna figure it out on my own. Like, no, I know they have more experience in that field than I do. So I definitely don't mind reaching out, getting assistance, so we should be all right. But I'm definitely not looking forward to it though.
Right. And your daughter has all those female
Absolutely.
role models.
Mm-hmm.
So what about male role models? How's that department?
She should be good. I feel like I surround myself around a lot of positive men. So, she has her godfathers, my uncle, my grandfather, her great grandfather, just different cousins and stuff like that. So, cause like I come from a big family, so there's like a lot of us. So I feel like she'll be more than okay, you know, just like being around and engulfed. And that's the thing too, we're very close. Like we're not like a distant family. So like my family, we have, you know, functions all the time. We have cookouts, we have game nights. So we're always around each other. So it's like she'll always be surrounded by that nucleus of, you know, different men. Like I said, my grandfather, my uncle, you know, my good friends that are like her uncles and stuff like that. So she'll definitely have a balanced dose of both.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So are you ever concerned with, because there's this idea that like women get the idea of the type of men that they want based on their fathers. So
Right.
are you ever concerned about what kind of model you're setting yourself, and what kind of men do I want my daughter to be around and to have in her life?
Well, definitely. I know that I wouldn't say so much concern, but definitely cognizant of it. Like I definitely try to make sure that I'm giving off um, an example of, because obviously, like you said, I do know that you know you're your child's first like role model. So whatever she sees me do is most likely what she's gonna feel is the standard. So I definitely want to make sure that I'm setting the example and showing her, you know, these are the things that you shouldn't accept. These are the things that you should accept. You know, these are the standards that you should have when you're looking for a husband and stuff like that. So yeah, those are definitely important things for me. And obviously surrounding myself with people who are like-minded so that when she's around them, it's the same thing. So yeah, I'm definitely cognizant of that because I do know that that's the first example they get, you know, women, their dads. So yeah, I try to make sure I'm setting the right example.
Like what kind of qualities do you want your daughter to find in a partner?
Supportive, loving, um, intelligent, uh, grounded, family orientated, um, understanding, financially, definitely someone who can provide. Um, I don't want to make that such an important thing because I know that at times you can be with someone who's financially stable, but they're horrible. You know, they're a horrible person. They're not there for you emotionally. They're not there for you mentally. So I feel like, you know, although that's something that I want her to look at, I don't want to make that the most important thing, but definitely the, you know, the love, the emotional support, the understanding, and just the willingness to be able to build and understand each other. Because I know in a relationship, that's very important, just being able to understand your partner. You know, you're going to bump heads sometimes, there's going to be adversity, but you just have to always be willing to talk and communicate and be willing to, you know, make adjustments together because nobody's perfect. You know, no relationship is perfect. So I just want her to have that with somebody where she can know, like, you know, this person loves me, he understands me, he cares for me. He's willing to, you know, make adjustments. He's willing to talk. He's willing to just, you know, be an emotional stability for me.
And also someone consistent who will be
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So what advice would you give to parents out there?
In terms of like just raising a child,
Yes.
um, I would just say be the example that you want your kids to follow. You know, like you can't depend on TV for that. You can't depend on social media for that. You can't depend on other people for that. You have to be the example that you want to see. So it's like you can't have a dysfunctional marriage and want your child to be in a functional marriage. You know, you have to be the example because you're the, like I said, the first example they see and the most important. So I would just say, you know, just try to live out all of the things that you're going to end up telling your kids because, you know, being a hypocrite is tough and people read that. You know I did as a kid. It was, like I said earlier, it was very tough for somebody to tell me something when their lifestyle was totally opposite of what they were telling me. So I just think that the most important thing is just, you know, living what you're preaching. So that way, when your kid hears it, they can not just hear it from you, but they can also see it from your actions. And I would just say also just being understanding, you know. I think that's another thing that's very important with children. Like children go through a lot young, you know, their hormones and just certain things that they might not understand. So just being understanding and not, because I know a lot of parents, especially like in my era of being a child, like parents can be very judgmental sometimes, you know, and sometimes that's not the answer. That'll just push your kid further away from you. So just trying to be an understanding parent that, you know, allows their kid to feel comfortable and feel like they're in a comfortable space and talking to you. You know, you can reprimand them, you can be stern with them, but also just be understanding and loving.
Awesome. That is awesome advice. And I'll ask this one last question and then we'll start to wrap it up. So, I mean, I know your daughter's 3. So if, let's say she were a little older and I went up to her and I said, you know, what do you think of your dad? What do you think she would tell me?
She would probably say, my dad is really funny because we're jokesters. Like she and I are like 2 comedians together. She'll definitely say, you know, that she loves me a lot. She, you know, she says that now. She'll definitely say that I'm supportive. And I think she'll definitely appreciate, you know, how I love her mom. You know, she sees me be affectionate with her mom. She sees me, you know, talking to her mother in a gentle way. She doesn't really see us argue. I'm not cursing at her mother. And, you know, so like, I'm like I said, I'm doing the opposite of certain things that I saw. So it's like, she'll definitely be able to say like, you know, my dad is a great example. And just that he loves me. I know that there's no way she could ever question that.
Right. And the fact that you took your experiences, especially with your own father, and you're applying it to your experience now as a
Right.
child, and you brought up something earlier that was really interesting, like you learned from your father what not to do, and
Right.
that in itself is a lesson.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I honestly, I'm big on forgiveness. So it's like, even now, like I would never down talk my dad to my daughter. So like if he wants to have a relationship with her, or he's like, you know, this is a second chance for me, or another shot at parenthood, then I would welcome that. You know, like there's no animosity in terms of that, you know. So even that aspect, because I know that's important too, you know, having a grandfather, because I had a grandfather, and that kind of helped when I wasn't really in touch with my dad and stuff, having 2 grandfathers that were awesome, you know, because although I didn't always have a relationship with my dad, I always had a relationship with his parents, you know, both of them. So that was very integral too, to know that, you know, it might not be from him, but I'm feeling the love and the consistency from that side of the family. But it's coming from my grandfather, my grandmother.
And what you didn't find with one parent, you're able to find another parent.
Right.
So there's more than one type of relationship that you can have.
Yes, exactly. And honestly, and even in negative relationships or relationships that may be a little dysfunctional, there are bright spots in it. Because I would never say that like there's not a lot of things that I didn't learn from my dad. Like my father's a very intelligent man. So the time that I did spend with him, he definitely, you know, dropped a lot of jewels on me. There's a lot of things that he said to me that I still use now as a 29-year-old man. So I'll say, you know, life is ups and downs, you know, you just have to find a balance. And I know that there's probably reasons that he wasn't able to be the you know, type of father that, because I don't think my father didn't want to be a great father. You know what I mean? Like I know my father loved me and wanted me. You know, my mother makes sure to always tell me that. I just think sometimes life, circumstances, traumas make it that you either succumb to them or you rise above them. And, you know, unfortunately, sometimes you succumb to them. But like I said, like I'm always open to have that line of communication where like he could definitely have a relationship with his granddaughter if that's what he wanted. Like I would never deny him that. I would never speak badly about him to her, you know.
Good. And that makes you, and you ended up the better person, and that makes you a strong person, and which of course you can teach to your daughter about how to be a strong person, a strong woman at that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, so thank you so much for this interview. That wraps it up for today. So to our viewers, you can find Malachi on Facebook under Malachi Davis. His name is Malachi. Last name is Davis. You could also find him on Instagram. His account name is Mal _ the Motivator. So it's MAL _ and his Twitter account is MALYMAL92. So that's at MallyMal92. And he is, of course, a motivational speaker. So if you are looking for a speaker for your event, for a conference, whether it's, well, are you speaking in person?
Yes. So I am doing that now. I still do both. So I did a virtual graduation recently. I was the keynote speaker, and they had 2 separate graduations. So instead of having me come in, because of the fact that like there's still COVID restrictions to a certain extent, they had me just do it virtually. But I have also done, you know, in-person speaking engagements since the restrictions have kind of been lifted to a certain extent. So I'm definitely doing both.
And where are you located?
Well, I'm in New York, so I'm anywhere. Long Island, I've done events, Brooklyn, Queens, all of the boroughs, and I've also done stuff out of state. So I've spoken at Boston College, New England College in New Hampshire, Worcester College in Massachusetts. So it's really no limit. Los Angeles, I've done speaking engagements. So it's really, you know, wherever you are, I'm, you know, willing to come and, you know, work things out. So.
Awesome. So if you're looking for in-person speaker, you just heard him. He's willing to travel anywhere in the country. So looking for somebody in person, virtual, he's definitely available. Just send him an email at mallymal329@gmail.com. That's MALYMAL329@gmail.com. Mr. Davis, thank you so much for coming on today. This was awesome.
No problem. Thank you, Gabby. I appreciate it.
Yes. And thank you to our viewers for joining us today. Please check out our YouTube channel for more videos and clips, and don't forget to subscribe. So please tune in next time. That's all for today. Signing off. Bye.
Thank you.